How's it going? And welcome to episode 248 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, joined as always by Kevin Hastings. Thank you all for listening or watching. We got a great show lined up for you today as we get into the swing of things, Kevin. We are officially in FAAB season, no longer draft season. Opening day is behind us. All three of them. Unfortunately, there were 3 opening days. We had to wait until that first pitch of your Royals were the last team to officially get an opening day on the books. But we got actual baseball to put in the rear view mirror, look forward to for the rest of the season. We are officially in the middle of it. How you doing? How you feeling about it?
Doing great, Adam. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well as well. I think you are. You get to go see your Red Sox tomorrow, opening weekend. Little rant here. I can't freaking believe it's the 4th day of the Major League Baseball season, and it's the first day we get to see 15 games.
Right?
Ridiculous. It wasn't very long ago that we were. It's less than 5 years ago because we were sitting here talking about how great it is that all 15 teams played on Thursday. Mm-hmm. I can't believe they went back on that and screwed it up. But no, I'm doing well. Other than that,
yeah. Yeah, with the Yankees and the Giants getting the off day the very next day.
I don't really mind the one game the night before thing. I mean, Cincinnati did that for years. I can live with that, but not everybody else playing the following day.
There were 3 other series that didn't start until Friday.
Right. And Kansas City at Atlanta was originally scheduled for Thursday. Atlanta changed it, and I never heard a reason for that. Yeah. But that was like a month ago. They changed it. I don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I've ever heard is like, all right, you do this scattered thing in the first couple of days for the first series because for rain concerns.
Right.
You know, if you're going to get rained out, you need that.
That's why everybody play Thursday.
Yeah. Just give some people a day off on Friday. That's fine. Oh man. But yeah, I'm okay with the spectacle of the one game, but those teams should also be playing the next day. They shouldn't get that off day. Right. But either way, whatever. We got baseball. Yeah. We now have
we're nitpicking here. This is a good time of year.
But we got some weird schedule. Like the first full week always has some weird scheduling as well. We don't get into that true. You either have Monday or Thursday or sometimes both off. Actually, last year they did a really good job. They were like the minimal amount of 2-day off teams all year round. Like I felt like every time we talked about the schedule, we're like, nobody has 2 days off. Nobody has 2 days off throughout most of the year. So I'll give them credit for that. But we have some weird days off, and we'll get to that in
opportunity. And we will next week as well, because some teams don't have their home opener until next Friday, and therefore they got to have an off day in case there's a rain out to have their home opener. So, there are a couple of teams that have like a 4-game first half of the week, Monday through Thursday, but only 2-game Friday through Sunday next week. So be careful of that. When you're setting next week's lineups and fabbing this Sunday for next weekend, because there may be a couple of those instances we don't catch as we're talking about the players individually.
But with actual games happening and rosters having to be set and all this, we have news. So we can get back into this swing. Let's get into one of the more recent ones that just came through today as we're recording this on Saturday evening. Earlier today, Jacob deGrom was scratched from his scheduled season premiere on his Saturday start. Jacob Latz, who many of us were hoping or thinking he might get a shot at the 5th man in the rotation job. He did not, but he still got in there before Kumar Rocker due to this Jacob deGrom news. Do you think Latz gets another shot, whether or not deGrom is healthy or not, for his next scheduled start?
I think it's possible. And Latz was a pretty popular guy late in draft season. We started thinking he was going to make this rotation anyway. I would, if I already roster him, definitely hold him this week unless we get some news that deGrom's definitely going to go. Right now, it looks like Roster Resource has him pegged in on Tuesday, which would not have been his next time through the rotation. So, yet. So, that's a good sign, but I don't see where Jason got that news. I'm not doubting it, but it could be his thought of when he'll slide back in. I have not seen that official news, so I would definitely keep an eye on this the rest of Saturday evening and Sunday, hoping to get more news. And if we don't get more, I definitely would not drop Latz yet. If you did not drop him last weekend when he did not make the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, Latz did pretty good. He did go just 4 innings, which is not totally surprising. One of the main reasons why he didn't win that final spot in the rotation was the concerns that he wouldn't be able to last long enough into games with the velocity, with his stuff and all that. Only goes 4 innings, 3 strikeouts, no earned runs. And so it looked pretty good all around. Could be an opportunity. We hear about this a lot across a lot of different teams with the players being considered for like piggyback situations. Robleski and Otani being the more prominent example of that, of what we expect to see over the weekend as well, or into next week. So there could be an opportunity for that. If that's the case, he's obviously has more. He has more value to us as the reliever, as the first man up, coming in, and even if he just gets the 3 or 4 innings after whoever else is getting the first 3 or 4 innings, that's still going to be. I mean, if he replicates what he did today, but coming in the 4th inning instead of coming in the 1st inning, I'm all about that.
Absolutely.
Until you hear some actual news or see it actually happen in real life, hard to predict when it might, though. In Cleveland, or for Cleveland, Tanner Bibee pitched on Friday, but he did leave his start with reported shoulder inflammation. How concerned are, I mean, you hear the word shoulder and you hear inflammation, 2 words you don't want to hear together, especially with your pitcher. How concerned are you here, and are you making any rash decisions within FAAB based on what we saw?
If I roster Tanner Bibee, I'm expecting him to be out for a while. Now, we don't know that yet, but shoulder inflammation is never good to hear. The fact that he threw 1 warm-up pitch and was removed, that scares me. Something's wrong, in my opinion. It's more than just that didn't feel quite right. If you throw 1 warm-up pitch, call out the trainer and you're removed. So we don't know yet, but as far you don't want to drop him, I don't believe yet, but I'm definitely not counting on having him in my lineup the next couple of weeks. And recording.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm assuming he misses at least through this next week. They did say
once he was pitching at the Dodgers, we wouldn't have thrown him out there anyway.
Exactly.
But so you'd have been replacing him this week anyway, hopefully. But if we do get more news, he might even be a drop.
Yeah, it's just a question of who we actually might be able to expect Cleveland to roll out there in his stead throughout the course of, whether it's the next 2 starts, next 3 starts. Have you eyeballed anybody that you might be looking at in Cleveland?
I hadn't yet, but I want to look quick. It's Logan Allen probably. Yeah, we already thought he might. He already had a chance. Messick had to beat him out. I mean, it's not exciting, but I think it's probably Logan Allen.
Yeah, that's unfortunately. That's what I was afraid you were gonna say. We got Jason hasn't even made any adjustments on what he expects to have. He still got Bibee in there for the next couple starts. So obviously, well, I wouldn't say obviously, but I do not expect him personally. They are downplaying it. They said that it's not serious, but he'll be reevaluated. When we get some actual news on that, we can act on it. All right, away from pitchers, let's go over to some other bad news. This is the worst part of like opening weekend. It's like
Right.
all the mystery injuries we didn't even know existed. The guys that are getting the worst possible opening day luck that you can think of. Let's start with Mickey Moniak in Colorado. He was placed in the IL with a sprained right finger. The Rockies call up catcher Braxton Fulford to take his place on the roster. So obviously not a one-to-one swap. What expectations are you seeing or expecting to see out of the Rockies lineup that maybe you hadn't thought of prior with Moniak in place?
Well, I think we were only going to see Moniak. Uh,
As a
I,
D.
I, I, yeah, I think we were only going to see Moniak versus righties, but that and Jake McCarthy is going to be out there. Jordan Beck's going to be out there, and versus righties as well, because Jordan Beck's going to play versus about anybody. Brenton Doyle. I think this is some playing time insurance for Jake McCarthy. I think it means we see him definitely versus every single righty, possibly versus some lefties as well. But I think it solidifies Jake McCarthy leading off versus all righties in Colorado. He's already got a stolen base, so and he's not highly rostered, so we will be talking about him later in the show as well.
Fair enough. Also out of Colorado, just a little bit of a surprising note. TJ Rumfield did make the roster, not only making the roster, but being two starts in a row at first base. I would expect that trend to continue, even if it is the strong side of platoon. Just the fact that he made this opening day roster with a strong spring. In Colorado. Now, Colorado, the Rockies don't play in Colorado for like the first like 3 series of the season. I feel like they do this on purpose every year. It's like, let's wait as long as possible to get these guys back to Colorado. And it makes sense for a lot of different reasons. But any interest in TJ Rumfield? Because even if you didn't think to pick him up last week in FAAB because of the whole rookie thing in NFBC, I mean, he's made his debut. He's available. He'll be available wherever you're fabbing.
Yeah, 500 plate appearances last year, a little over in the Yankees organization. A very, very large majority of that at AAA, only 34 of those plate appearances at AA. Over a 9% walk rate and only a 16.5% strikeout rate. That leads to a nice batting average, moderate power, 15 home runs, 17 in 2023 at high A and AA. So just making that progression, hitting that mid-teens power. Just a handful of stolen bases each of the last couple of years. But this is a guy that I think he's not a zero anywhere and could be a batting average asset. Projections for his first stint in the major leagues have him at 260 down to in the 250s and 260s, most of the projections, the bat being down into the 240s. But when projections are projecting a rookie for a batting average, it already doesn't hurt us. I feel like we might get one that actually helps us. Projections are pretty rough on these guys when they first come up. So I feel like there could be something here in 15-team leagues. You typically want a little more power out of your first baseman, but in a corner spot, I think he's definitely on the radar. Probably not somebody I'm running to grab this weekend, but somebody to keep an eye on for sure.
Sure. 58% rostered in the main event, and those drafts are all done now. So that percentage is currently set in stone until this weekend changes things. PL projections for the week have him at a 275 average. Now, obviously, that's weekly, what have you. But the fact that
that's what we really care about.
Yeah, that's just this coming week, especially when only one of those series is happening in Colorado. He doesn't get that extra oomph. But overall, being projected right around the likes of Max Muncy in for the Athletics, Isaac Collins, Stephen Kwan. So he's like in that same kind of realm as far as overall value goes. So good to see that. Moving into Miami, Cristopher Morel hits the IL with a left oblique strain. So he'll be out for a little bit here. He was replaced rather quickly by Davinson De Los Santos, one of their top prospects, with first base eligibility, first and third base eligibility, at least in Yahoo. So I'm probably not anywhere else. Actually, not sure that he's available in the NFBC yet, because he did not make his debut yet.
And he's not a guy that was drafted much.
Anyway, yeah. So he's not coming up in my roster ship page that I'm just trying to do.
Yeah,
Control F.
He didn't get that. We needed him in the lineup today, or he could, as long as he gets in the game today. It's got to be by 10 a.m. on Sunday, and none of the games start before 10 a.m. on Sunday. So we need to see him get into Saturday's game for him to be available this weekend.
But going back to Morel, 27% rostered in the main event. Is this a quick drop, especially if you've got more than one IL in the NFBC formats?
I think so. I've heard some people kind of just glossing over, but at times when healthy, last season, I liked Griffin Conine. I know that wasn't much. We only had 86 plate appearances, but at times I liked him in my lineup for that little short spurt we got. If he's going to be healthy and play at least against all righties, which I believe he will, Griffin Conine is another one I'm going to watch. I'm not going to run out to grab him this week, but he's the one I'm going to keep an eye on due to this injury.
Fair enough. Yeah, of course, De Los Santos might be interesting, but just the fact that, one, he's probably not going to be available, just somebody to put on your watch list once he is. I don't know how much he will end up actually playing either, in that situation. Very high strikeout rate last year. Obviously put up a really good season the year before in the lower levels, but as he moved up, hasn't really been somebody that I've been super excited about, just because I wasn't sure where the playing time was going to be and what kind of production we were going to see at the major league level. So now we get a whole week to see what that might look like in Miami in a new season. All right. All the news really came out of Milwaukee, unfortunately, with one of those secret injuries I mentioned earlier. Jackson Chourio, many people's second round draft pick throughout draft season, was placed in the IL with a fractured left hand that supposedly he sustained early on in spring training before the World Baseball Classic, played through the World Baseball Classic with it, and then determined that nope, it's broken. We're going to go on the IL as opening day rosters were being set. Milwaukee being one of those teams that didn't play until Friday. So we had 2 full days of regular season baseball where we were completely in the dark. Anyway, so he'll be on the shelf for a little bit. Andrew Vaughn follows suit by fracturing his hammy on opening day. So he made it through. No secret injuries here. We knew exactly when it happened, but he'll be out probably for 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how his rehab goes after that surgery. Jefferson Cuero was called up by Milwaukee to replace Vaughn. And then there's speculation that Gary Sanchez may get some reps at first base, just out of necessity. So we have a lot going on in the lineup in Milwaukee. Overall takeaways here, Kevin. Nobody is droppable, like an automatic drop, I don't think, in this. Obviously not Chourio. Vaughn, debatable, but probably not. Overall thoughts here on what's going on in Milwaukee.
I think for the time being, at least versus righties, Garrett Mitchell will be the center fielder. I know they've had Lockridge on the roster. He made the opening day roster. I talked about him a couple of weeks ago. He did not start opening night, did get the start on Saturday, but Garrett Mitchell's been in center field for both games. So I think we see that for the 2 to 4 weeks. If you could use an outfielder, at least versus righties, once again, Jake Bauers has been in there at left field opening night, and that's opening up another outfield spot because I think he's playing first base, not Gary Sanchez. Sanchez might versus lefties, and they have a fairly split week, 2 lefties, 4 righties coming up. It is split even with each half, 1 lefty, 2 righties each half of the week. That makes it kind of tough to play any of these guys. But the guys on a large side, if you're getting 2 out of 3 games from them in a really deep league and you're in a tough spot, I'd take a shot. The guy that these injuries probably didn't affect too much, unless just the other positions needing filled. This definitely, I think, solidifies our guy David Hamilton at third base. So if you're looking for stolen bases, I would definitely be interested in David Hamilton. But yeah, I think it means Jake Bauers is the first baseman versus righties. Garrett Mitchell is versus righties, and we will see Lockridge out there in left field with Frelick in his normal right field until we get Churio back. So this is only a couple week thing, hopefully up to 4, they're saying. So probably plan on 3.
Yeah, I mean, you can still make these decisions knowing that time frame is pretty much set, right?
Right. You got at least 2 weeks out of these guys.
I like the call out for David Hamilton. I don't like the call out and the fact that I dropped him last week out of what I thought was necessity for other moves. But, to see David Hamilton getting everyday playing time is just kind of a dream come true.
In a lineup like that, where even at the bottom, we expect him to get 4 plate appearances to get on base and get us a couple stolen bases and runs.
That's all you're asking for. The fact that we're seeing Jake Bauers as their cleanup hitter on probably an everyday basis, though, is, I don't know. It makes you feel some feelings.
I did see mention that Christian Yelich might get some run in the outfield. I hope they don't do that. He's so good when he's healthy. Just let him keep DH and don't go there. They have guys.
Yes,
they have guys that are competent in the outfield. So please don't put Yelich out there.
Yeah, exactly. There's absolutely no need. All right, we will move on to our last piece of news, small little piece of news here. Tommy Pham is latched on once again, this time on a minor league deal with the New York Mets. He does have an opt-out clause that he can he can trigger if he's not playing at Citi Field by April 25th. So we'll see if he ever dons a Mets uniform officially on the field, or if he just kind of does what he has tended to do over the last couple of years and play for like at least 3 different teams throughout the season in some capacity. But thoughts on Tommy Pham in the outfield or in the DH spot for the Mets come the end of April?
I knew you were going to put this on the rundown because we bring it up at some point every season. Tommy Pham does what Tommy Pham does when he's in a lineup. Unfortunately, I think it takes an injury for him to get into this lineup. Carson Benz looks like he's going to hold that spot down. Luis Robert Jr. with his walk-off home run on Saturday looks like the change of scenery is helping him out quite a bit. And Juan Soto, the only thing that I could see, and I don't think this will happen, especially Brett Beatty's hit the ground running in the season as well. I know we've had 2 games, but I don't think this would happen even it would be much later in the season. I could see at some point the Mets want Juan Soto to DH, and then that would open up a spot, but Brett Beatty's filled that fine so far, and I don't think Soto would go for that at this point. It would take a lot for them to convince him. Like, He'd have to play like O'Neal Cruz played yesterday in order for. I had to throw that dig in somewhere during the episode. That was ridiculous. But I think it takes an injury. But I think we'll see Tommy Pham in a lineup this season. I don't think it's going to be with the Mets. Yeah.
Oh, sure, absolutely. He'll.
And I think that's probably his thought too. If somebody gets banged up, I can go with this team that I expect to win. I don't have to settle for a team just to get my playing time yet. Maybe I can latch onto a team that's going somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, that's what a lot of, especially super veterans do, in their waning years of their career. They're like, fine, somebody will need me at some point. It doesn't need to be now. It can just be later. I'll take a prorated contract and I will chase that final ring. And I'm okay with that at this point. I guess the question is, are you more surprised that Tommy Pham, who makes their way onto a major league roster first, Tommy Pham or Lucas Giolito?
Lucas Giolito.
All right. Okay.
On the roster, right? Not in a game? Because he's probably got some building up to do, but there's already a couple teams that should be on the phone with Lucas Giolito now if they're not already.
Yeah. That's the thing. Should be. No, I will say in a game. I'm going to say in a game because here's the thing. It's like
then I'd go with Pham within a game. With the
it's just a matter of getting him onto the major league roster first.
Mm-hmm.
He signs that minor league deal if he's willing to sign that minor league deal. Luckily, he's smart enough to put in that opt-out clause after just about like 3.5 weeks into that contract. So, we'll see how quickly that happens. All right. Well, that is it. Last piece of news that just came through is just the fact that, all our feelings so far were correct. Knock on wood. Zach Wheeler looking pretty good in his 3 innings of work today, through 38 pitches for Lehigh Valley, in his 1 of 2 rehab starts that he's scheduled to make. So pending, a poor outing in his second rehab stint, should see him in Philadelphia in shorter order than I think most people were drafting him might have thought.
I have some breaking news.
I love that.
Start looking for who the Knicks closer in Kansas City is. Carlos Estevez just gave up 6 runs in the 9th on 2 walks, 4 hits, including a grand slam. They entered the bottom of the 9th up 2-0, and he gave up 6 runs to lose 6-2.
Was he throwing like 85, or is he finally back up, above 90? Because that was the big rub on Estevez throughout spring training, and he doesn't always start off very strong either. But this year, it seemed like it was.
It looks like his 4-seamer was sitting about 92.
Okay, all right. Well, it's above 90. Yeah. But man, 6 runs.
Yeah, 6 runs is ugly. So I'm sure Kansas City is going to say, right, 6 runs is not any different for the results than 3, but. Yeah, that's for a guy a lot of people were off of anyway, and I wasn't one of them. I drafted a lot of Estevez, but I don't know if a team that has playoff aspirations. I've said that he has a long leash. I still believe that. I don't think he's losing the role right now, but I'd start thinking some backup plans.
Yeah, some stashes. So, I mean, is it Lucas Ertzeg? Is it, well, it's probably not Matt Strom, though he probably could do it. Is there any dark horses in there that you like? This is your team.
Yeah, well, I just saw this, so I'm not sure. I would have said Ertzeg, but he didn't look good this spring, and then he had a walk and a hit. He didn't give up any runs today, but he had let 2 runners reach base in the 8th inning. So, I'm not so sure it wouldn't be Strom at this point.
John Schreiber, everybody forgets, has some experience in that role, even if it was short-lived, and looked pretty good while doing it. So, don't count him out completely. But I agree with you. I mean, he's not losing the job tomorrow based on this one instance. But unless it is injury related, unless it is, something else that had a lot of us worried throughout spring training, and it just kind of
that velocity was a big worry.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's we got to get into what we're actually going to do with our FAAB, Kevin. But first, we do have to take a quick break. All right, we are back. Of course, you are still listening to On the Wire. We thank you so much for doing so. Whether you're listening, you're watching, or you're just, thinking about us fondly. We are going to get right into making any kind of recommendations, observations based on the categories like we typically do: power, speed, opportunity, and then hitting into the pitching categories, our volume stats, wins and strikeouts. If you're chasing, you want to chip away at ratios, we'll get to that next. Saves, and of course our wild card section, which is always fun to do for the first 2/3 of the season, really. So as we tend to do, we will go through category by category. Let's start off with our power categories, Kevin. A lot of options, this early in the season, right? Because it's like we didn't know some players were going to even be available. TJ Rumfield, I brought up earlier, didn't really know he was an option not only to make the roster but to start. We obviously talked about some of the big names coming up in the middle infield: JJ Weather and Kevin McGonigal in Detroit, in St. Louis, respectively. Also made available. Most of them drafted pretty much everywhere, but there still tends to be some guys that sneak through the cracks, become available in the first week, 2 weeks, and then there's always injuries, guys that are coming into roles that we didn't expect, like in Milwaukee, that we just talked about. So who do you have your eye on in the power category, home runs, RBI, that might either be good enough just for this week, or somebody you wish you had drafted, so let's get them now?
Somebody I did draft a couple of times late, still has quite a bit of availability. Rhys Hoskins in Cleveland, not in the lineup on Saturday, and this is very intriguing to me. Rhys Hoskins off to a nice start, and he is 58% rostered in main events, so available in over 40% of those. Only 3% rostered in 12s, and I would roster Rhys Hoskins if I need a power bat in 12s. I believe he is going to be first base DH nearly every day. He's not in the lineup on Saturday, but they gave both him and Chase DeLauter a day off from playing in the field, and DeLauter got that DH start. How can you take DeLauter out of the lineup when he's hit 3 home runs in his first 2 regular season games as an MLB player? So I don't think this is a regular thing that we will see often. I think typically we would see Chase DeLauter in right field again the 3rd day in a row. So Rhys Hoskins, I think, does get nearly everyday playing time. He signed late with Cleveland. I think it's him and Manzardo just alternating days at first base and DH most of the time, as we've seen Cleveland do for the past couple of seasons with other players. So I love Rhys Hoskins getting this playing time out of the gate the first 2 games of the season, and going to try to grab him in the leagues I did not draft him late.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he took a little while to kind of latch on somewhere was a little surprising based on who was still available on the free agent market at that point in spring, getting into spring training. But to see him in Cleveland, projected by PLV to be pretty good, 2.5 RBI on the week. Just under the way I always look at it is that when you're projected for 1 or less than 1 home run in these weekly projections, I just take that as percentage chance he's going to hit a home run. So we got a 70% chance. He's projected for 0.7 home runs, which would be an interesting thing to actually see on a stat board. Yeah. So about 70%.
We have partial scoring in NFL fantasy. So
I know. So why not? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, granted, also projected for a 200 average in the week that he has. But that's not why we're looking at a guy like this for this particular time period. You're not expecting to use Hoskins week in, week out, just in the right circumstance, especially if you're looking for the power situation. Um, yeah, anybody else in the power category looking for a home run, looking for good matchups, or a couple of RBI because they happen to be in the right spot in the lineup that you weren't expecting?
Well, not necessarily that I wasn't expecting. Miguel Andujar in San Diego, 63% rostered in main events. So he's available in well over a third of leagues. So I like that a little bit. Fortunately, we've seen Mark Vientos get a little bit of playing time early, probably going to be short side platoon. So not a lot of interest there unless we see the Mets set to face a bunch of lefties. But Mark Wallner, it's got a little bit of availability in Minnesota. But Rhys Hoskins could be at the top of my list for certain.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's get some speed under our belt then, Kevin. As you look for some runs scored, you are in some stolen bases. Of course, you already mentioned David Hamilton being at least somebody to take a look at who might be available in your leagues. Also has multi eligibility, which is nice as well. Well, he will soon. Just second base as of right now, but should gain that third base eligibility by 10 games. So, by the end of next week, I guess, maybe early the week after. So put him in MI, that's what you expect, but it will be nice to get stolen bases out of your corner, or at least have the option to, if you didn't get your stolen bases elsewhere in your draft. So you can't usually find that position to fill in that gap in your stat categories. But anybody else, Kevin, that you might be eyeballing for that reason?
Yeah, Jake McCarthy, that we briefly mentioned earlier as well, and Jake Myers in Houston. He's only 55% rostered in main events. So there's quite a few speed guys out there that aren't necessarily going to destroy you other places. All three of those guys I'd be happy with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel it's easier earlier in the season if you are doing any kind of, prop betting when it comes to stolen bases. I feel like they haven't really always caught up that quickly if you can find the right matchups, but not as easy in my mind to stream your stolen bases in your weekly leagues in your early on in your year-long season. So a lot of guys running already, but not necessarily guys that I'm going to be reaching out and trying to like fill in the gaps this early in the season, as far as trying to just try to find some stolen bases on the wire. I'm always first one to say you can definitely stream stolen bases throughout the year. I just think it's a little harder to do in the first couple weeks of the season until we start seeing some patterns, we start seeing some usage,
we had a lot of coaching changes that will affect
exactly.
the stolen base opportunities, red lights and green lights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see exactly what's happening in. I think Washington is one of the biggest ones we're looking at, and a couple other ones that, Nasim Nunez, who you've mentioned before, of course, he is projected for 2 stolen bases next week by PLV weekly projections. If you don't have a hold of these, by the way, if you're wondering where I'm getting them from, of course, you can always sign up for PL Pro. You get not only daily but weekly projections powered by PLV. In addition to all the other fun stuff, you can talk to us on the Discord. You can do a bunch of other things with all the different cool apps that Kyle and team have put out throughout the season. And sign up for yearly, you'll have all access to the live draft assistant for next year's drafts throughout the course of the end of the term of your subscription. So take a look at that as well. Moving
I have
on.
a question for you before we move on from
Let's
speed.
do it. Yes.
Houston has played 3 games. 2 of them have been versus lefties. And we have seen Bryce Matthews in the starting lineup versus both lefties. Do we see him more than that? And is 3 games versus lefties this early in the season enough for a guy that stole over 40 bases at AAA last year? We're talking speed. Bryce Matthews is going to run, and he's going to get the playing time at least versus lefties, but it may only be versus lefties. So what are you thinking in Houston? I think it's worth a shot the first half of the week when they face 2 out of 3 lefties. If you're short on bags.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the fact that if he's going to steal on lefties, then
yeah,
give me all the righties. Like, I mean, even here's the thing: even if he's not going to play, he's the type of guy though. If he's not going to play against righties, then he's still going to get in there and have more opportunity to steal bases when against those righties. I mean, everybody and their cousin knows it's a lot much harder to steal on a lefty because they're just staring at you the whole time, right?
Yeah.
At least while you're sitting on first base. I mean, I'd like to see it happen. And if you're looking for if you know that's how you drafted and you did not draft well as far as stolen bases go, and you're in an overall and you need some kind of bump. I'd be going after Bryce Matthews where he's available. What's his he's got to be available.
23% on main events.
Yeah.
He's going to strike out, but he's also going to walk. Moderate power the last couple seasons in the minors, mid-teens home runs, 15 and 17 the last 2 seasons. So he's not going to be a 0 in home runs and RBI, which a lot of the guys with that stolen base potential are. Yeah, I think he's worth a shot here. And for me, it's a little early to be streaming for stolen bases. You don't want to fall behind in home runs and RBI. But if he's only going to play versus lefties and he's got that moderate power, I'm definitely interested the first half of this week on teams that I feel like I'm light in speed. We don't know yet. We don't know how our categories are working out. However, all these counting stats, just like wins for the major league teams, count the same today as they count the last weekend in September. Mm-hmm. So do these counting stats. I think on teams that I feel like I'm light on speed, I might try to grab him this Sunday night and put him in for the first half of the week.
Mm-hmm.
If he starts getting at bats versus righties, then we'll hold on to him.
It doesn't play in the idea of if he's going to play against righties or lefties is the most important thing. It doesn't hurt that his next 2 series are at West Sacramento and at Colorado back to back after the series against my Red Sox to start the week. So that's, if he's like you said, he's not a 0 in the other categories. So just nice to see that opportunity present itself to really not be the 0 in those ballparks. Keep an eye and see if he starts that game on Sunday as well. If he gets 3 in a row, regardless of handedness, it's still, and he can do anything with it. I'd be keeping an eye on it.
The free projections on Fangraphs, it's Zips that will project these guys for more of a full season. The Zips projection rather than the 30 games the other projection systems give him. 119 games, 496 plate appearances would project him for 17 home runs, 27 stolen bases. So, if he starts getting more playing time than short side platoon, he'll become more and more popular. So grabbing him now might be a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Then we will now move on to our opportunity section, Kevin. As we look ahead at the week's schedule, like we said, so far so good. It's only the first full week of the season, but nobody has that dreaded 2 days off, that 5-game work week. There are a handful of teams that have 7 games though. Arizona, Atlanta, the New York Mets, and San Francisco both play, or all 5 teams play 7 games next week. Everybody else has 1 day off, but there are some interesting days off as well. This one not as big of a deal, especially in your NFBC formats where you're changing your lineups over on Fridays. But Kansas City and Minnesota have their off day on Tuesday instead of on Monday or Thursday, or instead of Thursday, that is. But Toronto and the Chicago White Sox are off on Friday. So mental note there when setting your lineups or considering who you might be picking up for the week specifically. Yeah, that's great that they have 4 days in the week, but you're probably going to have to think twice whether or not you're going to start them over the weekend in Toronto or for the White Sox. Everybody else is off just on Thursday. Colorado is splitting their week. They continue to be on the road, 3 at Toronto to start, but they do come home against the Phillies to end the week with 3. Cincinnati also splitting. We got Pittsburgh. They're going to be hosting Pittsburgh for the beginning of the week, but then they travel to the opposite of a hitter-friendly ballpark in Texas to end the week. And then we're not putting Tampa Bay on here anymore because they're back in their pitcher-friendly park as opposed to their hitter-friendly park from last year. But the Athletics still play in West Sacramento. Not only half the week, though. They play 3 in Atlanta, and then they do host Houston for 3. So with all that in mind, anything else, Kevin, who are you eyeballing that have a good opportunity in the first full week of the Major League season?
I just realized I should check this roster percentage quick.
Oh, we got.
Oh yeah, he's not rostered anywhere, and he has second base, third base eligibility. Playing every day. They've faced a righty, 2 righties, and a lefty. In fact, the San Francisco Giants have shuffled their order a little bit, but the same 9 guys have been in the lineup all 3 games in the hitting lineup. And Casey Schmidt is the first baseman with dual eligibility there at middle and corner. He is my favorite guy for opportunity, and a guy that I think I'm going to try to grab, even if I don't necessarily need him at this point. I think this is a good guy to have on your bench that covered middle and corner. If you're not solid on coverage yet with your lineups, in draft season, some of us will take more pitchers, try to see a start or 2 out of some of the pitchers, and then lean more towards coverage for the weekend in season. At least that's my philosophy. I'll start dwindling the number of pitchers on my bench and make sure I have the coverage for the weekend on offense. And somebody like Casey Schmidt, as we're making that transition, that can cover middle and corner, especially this coming week with the Giants having 7 games.
Nice. Let me ask you about, only because the PL projections look pretty good. He probably won't play every day, but when he does play, if he is continuing to be in the 2 spot for Toronto, Nathan Lukes, left field. He did start on Friday against the righty. He did not start on Saturday against the lefty. But like I said, he was in the 2 spot for Toronto when he did start against that righty. Even if he only starts, 4 out of the 6 games that Toronto has, if all those 4 do come in that first full week or the first.
No, but it's 3 and 1, so you're getting 3 like you're going to get with most players anyway in the first half. So yes, I think that, and that's where Jason Martinez had him projected to be, was in the 2 hole versus right-handed pitching. So yeah, absolutely. I like that call. One other one, based on matchups, is Joey Loperfido is getting his playing time out of the gate. So we could put him here in opportunity or power. There's a lot of borderline guys but I think it's a little early. Hopefully we don't need some of these guys yet, but a couple of them could turn out to stick with our teams. So definitely in 12s, right? When we're churning, I'm grabbing some of these guys. uh, like Nathan Lukes, who has a 3-game week the first half of the week. That's the type of guy you definitely want to be churning in at 12. It's a little harder in 15 when you're not so sure you want to drop the guys you would have to get them in your lineup. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Luke's can't, from what I can tell, 0% rostered and pretty much everywhere, which was, I mean, maybe a little surprising, maybe not. But even in the main event, 0%. Lou Perfino, only at 18% rostered in the main event. So both those guys, if you need outfield help, even if it is a short-term fix, at least
Houston has that split week this week, so you might not be able to use Lou Perfino much this week. But I think he's going to be a popular ad, maybe not this week, but when the week for his playing time comes up. So if you have room, go ahead and grab him now.
Yeah. What, I think you just talked about it, but like, who does Toronto face throughout the course of, so they are,
Toronto's got some pretty nice pitching matchups. Looks like in Colorado, Sugano, Feltner, Freeland, or those are home versus Colorado. And then Burke, Kay, and Martin from the White Sox. So Toronto has some pretty nice matchups this week.
So yeah, I mean, like you said, they should get 3 righties and the lefty in that 4 games. So, who knows? Maybe Luke's gets in, and it's Freeland, the only lefty that they'll face in that first 4 days of the season of the week. So yeah, I like Luke's quite a bit for this particular week, and I just don't play him over the weekend. With only that one game.
Yeah, he's probably going to get one.
Yep. He'll probably only get one of those 2 games too, based on
exactly.
They're playing the White Sox. So yeah, they'll get Anthony Kay probably scheduled for Saturday. So he probably gets 3 days off in a row with the off day in the middle.
I should probably mention that I knew those pitching matchups so quickly by looking at Ryan Bloomfield's weekly planner that he puts out as part of the, if you're a member of the Bubba and the Bloom Discord. Should probably let everybody know that, because it's a great tool, and that's how I was able to let you know who the pitching matchups were so quickly there.
Excellent. All right. Well, plenty of things to think about on the hitting side, especially if you were just trying to chip away at things you didn't do that well in your draft. Now, hard to make those hard decisions, though, like you said, if you're this early in the season, because you don't want it to go in the opposite direction. But now we need to talk about pitching. But before we do that, we will take one more break. All right, Kevin. It's never too early to chase your wins and, of course, pad your strikeouts. So let's get into our volume stats here with our wins and our strikeouts. 2-star pitchers, vulture wins, guys are just finding their way into the rotation you didn't expect. If all you care about are wins and strikeouts, who are you looking at?
I have a few. Couple of guys that are 100% rostered in main events and only available in about 10% of 12-team online championships. But if you're in that roughly 10% of leagues where they're available, I definitely like Chris Bassett this week, who gets Texas at home and at Pittsburgh. And Zach Eflin is available in nearly 10% of 12-team leagues. That surprises me. He should be 100% rostered. He gets Texas at home this week, like both of those guys. The big one that we didn't think had made the rotation and pitched well today for me, Joe Boyle. I was so excited when he went to Tampa. Maybe they'll teach him some control. He didn't have the strikeouts today, but he only gave up 3 hits, 0 walks for Joe Boyle. Amazing. Yes, it was St. Louis, but next week he gets Minnesota. Not much better to line up than St. Louis. St. Louis has put up some runs so far this season, but not against Joe Boyle.
That's It's the opposite of what you expect, of course, out of Joe Boyle.
His whip looks amazing, and his ERA doesn't look so good. His ERA dropped down to 3. He gave up the 2 runs early and then pitched 6 innings, so his ERA is only 3. But it did look completely backwards earlier in the game, as the ERA was high as he gave up the 2 runs early and the very low whip. You're exactly right. It was backwards. Davis Martin has a nice 2-step. He's available everywhere. At Miami, well, not a nice 2-step. You get at Miami if you can. This I probably wouldn't do this. Toronto as well, with Davis Martin of the White Sox. But I did write him down if you really need somebody. I do really like this one. 100% rostered in the main event, but only 35% rostered in 12s. We've talked about this before. Main event players grabbed him last week or were drafting him because it was later when we knew where he was and what he's doing. Justin Verlander is available in 65% of 12-team leagues and gets at Arizona and then back home in Detroit versus St. Louis. Love that one. I think he's going to be a popular ad this week. And this one won't be so popular. This depends on what you think of Colorado's lineup and how improved are they. Because typically we go seeking out a game at Colorado. But when you get a 2-step versus Washington, and if it had been the last 2 seasons, we wouldn't have been scared of at Colorado. For Taijuan Walker, I think he's a guy I have some interest in. He'd be at the bottom of my waterfalls. But if I need a starter for this week, I will take that chance of Taijuan Walker going to Colorado to get that Washington start when I'm not even sure that Colorado I should be scared of.
Fair enough. Overall thoughts on, only because like this is one of those teams that has multiple two-star pitchers. Jose Suarez in Atlanta, he goes on he's scheduled to go on Tuesday, should get the Sunday start as well. Versus at the Athletics, not in Sacramento, and then at Arizona. Overall thoughts there with the just pure volume situation. Atlanta looking like they could be a team that can put up runs and get them into the win column, at least one if not both in both games.
Later in the season, I'd be all about this. I don't think I'm there yet.
He's the type of pitcher. He's going to need the help, right? He's going
to need that run support. When I'm chasing wins, I don't think I'm taking this much of a ratio risk this early in the season. Although projections have him, many of them for low 4s ERA, I might be able to be swayed here.
Well, I won't be the one that does it. I'm sorry, not this time.
No, yeah, I knew you wouldn't be.
Yeah, and then the other name that pops up only because, nobody seems to know exactly what the Angels are doing. PLV projections seem to think that oh geez, I lost the name already. Where'd he go?
Kokanovic?
Ryan Johnson might get 2 starts for the Angels. And if he does, then we've got at the Cubs and versus Seattle. So probably also a no at this point. But I think you kind of nailed it just now. It's like we're early in the season where the risk taking, like, is it worth getting ahead of it when there's less teams that are willing to make the risk? And like, listen, I'm not chasing it yet. But you're gonna have to chase them at some point. Is there something to be said about taking those risks early to get those 1 or 2 wins that you might get that you might not have opportunity to get later on in the season?
Absolutely. There's a fine line, and some of these guys you ask me about, I say this all the time. I might have a different answer tomorrow. I can flip back and forth because I say all the time, the reason we stream pitchers is because that's the only way you land the breakout guys in season. Because if somebody streamed them, probably. So
Sure.
if you, or they become really expensive all of a sudden, right? Either somebody already rosters them or they become really expensive if you're not taking shots like this. But at the same time, pick and choose a little bit as well. So I can flip flop on some of these guys. I already told you on a couple of them I could be swayed.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, it obviously depends on your roster construction. In this coming out of the draft, a lot harder to like make yourself drop a bunch of players that you just drafted in the first 20 rounds of your 30-round draft.
Also, it would depend a lot on the individual league and how my pitching has started out. Some of my leagues, I have double-digit ERAs, and it wasn't the fringe guys. Right, it was Cole Regans, it was Paul Skeens, right? And these guys going out there and getting blown up on those leagues. I'm not taking a chance on these guys, but on some of the leagues, you start off early and there's not a big sample size, and you can have an ERA below 2. Maybe I take that chance, but if you have an ERA below 2, do you need to take that chance? Right, so not very many leagues would I do it, but there's probably a spot out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm almost more apt to make the riskier play if I did have the Paul Skeens, Logan Webb of this week, only because it's like if I'm sitting with a sub-2 ERA after 3 days, like I know how easily that can flip.
That's gonna go away.
That's going away. Yeah, I was we got a screenshot, shout out to Brett Ford. He's in my TGFBI league, and he screenshotted me and him after day 1. This is after Wednesday's day game. We were at the top of our league, tied for first. And I'm like, all right, end it. We're done. Yep. Season's over, right? All right, cool. I'm okay sharing. But all right, let's move on to those ratios. We talked enough about them there. If we again, we want to pad. It's what's most important is to always get 9 guys that are going to put forth positive stats in your rotation. And that may just be guys that are going to help stabilize the Logan Webbs, the Paul Skeens starts that you might have accrued from last week. We constantly are updating this list. We usually just throw a new guy into the pile pretty much every week. Who's our first one, Kevin?
This one's a little iffy. This is based on seeing him pitch, knowing what his walk rate has been throughout the minor leagues, and a little bit of Major League Baseball. But seeing him pitch and what he's done this spring, and that's Eric Sabrowski in Cleveland. The biggest thing for me, he's had amazing stuff. We know that, and he pitched a fair amount of innings last season at the major league level. Had an ERA under 2 and a WHIP of 119. That WHIP of 119 came with almost a walk per inning. Right? He does not give up hits, but he makes Joe Boyle look like an elite command guy. So, so this one's kind of weird, but he wasn't walking as many guys this spring, and he looked amazing on Friday. And the cool thing about it for me was Sean Armstrong pitched the 7th, got in a jam, and they brought Sabrowski in, who was pegged to be their 7th inning guy. They brought Armstrong in first, and then Sabrowski came in, cleaned up his mess, and pitched an amazing 8th inning. I was watching that game. He was phenomenal, Sabrowski. His stuff looked nasty, and I hadn't heard of him. I went looking him up, and I saw all these walk issues in his past, and it was very hard to believe. He did not look like a guy that has had walk issues in the past. And he did have 4 walks in 7 2/3 innings this spring. That's an improvement, though. And then not to have any in his appearance, he just looked dominant. So this is a hesitant one when we're talking ratios, but he's definitely a guy I want to add. I just know I'm going to have to be careful of that walk problem. If he's not walking guys, this is a guy I would almost have in my lineup on a regular basis, because you're not just getting that ERA boost, you're getting a strikeout boost from a reliever. Even if it's just 3 or 4 innings a week, he could still give you 7 or 8 strikeouts.
See, this is huge too, because obviously this is not the category we're talking about here. But whenever you are considering either stashing or utilizing a reliever, if he's not going to hurt you, never mind help you in that strikeout department, you can't bank on the wins, chasing the wins and the vulture wins, but you can, target these guys that are going to at least allow you to tread. Like, are you going to start somebody? Like, are you going to? I'm streaming Steven Matz tomorrow in a couple of different places, but I'm like, am I going to stream Steven Matz, or am I going to stream who might get me 2 to 3 strikeouts? Or am I going to stream somebody like this, or Jeremy Estrada? Like, he might be on my bench. I might put him in, and if he gets 3 outings, he'll get me. He very well could give me 3 strikeouts in each outing.
Right.
It probably doesn't happen regularly like that, but if he can get me,
some of his minor league numbers look that way. I think it, like, at one stop he had 24 innings and 43 strikeouts, almost 2 strikeouts an inning. Right, this is something like that. I don't have his page pulled up now, but he had some ridiculous strikeout numbers. But the walk numbers are literally a walk per inning as well in those stops.
So, we can get into the next section, but of course you got to be looking at the Kansas City bullpen in general, as well in this area. But again, that's probably best saved for the saves category. But yeah, I mean, ultimately too, especially at this time of year, you can take advantage of guys that, don't pitch on Sunday, can set themselves up for a decent volume throughout the course of the full week, especially if you are targeting those teams that have the full 7-game work week, because a lot of the starters still are not fully, stretched out. Yeah, we saw a couple of 6 and 7 inning games in the first couple of games, but majority of teams will pull their starters if they're not being super efficient early on in the games, whether it be 4 innings, 5 innings. And then we have all these other injuries like the deGrom one that we talked about earlier, where the replacement Lats only went 4 innings anyway. So going to get some extra work out of bullpens, especially early on, and especially for those teams that don't have a lot of games, because they're going with a 4-man rotation. So they're going to rely on their bullpens a little bit more as well. So be strategic about it as far as grabbing the guys you think are going to get you 3 outings. They're going to get you 3 to 4 innings, 1 1/3, 1 2/3 over the course of 2 or 3 starts, or 2 or 3 appearances, to really maximize not only the impact that those ratios are going to have, but also you're not losing ground in strikeouts because of it. So good call out there, Kevin. All right. Well, I alluded to it already, but we do have to start speculating on saves from the jump. Of course, we already kind of talked about Kansas City's situation at the moment. Griffin Jacks also blew a save earlier. Not saying he's not the guy in Tampa, but we also know, he wasn't the guy last year either. So who's to say Tampa doesn't kind of mix and match? Clevenger pretty much being the one that's was drafted in his roster pretty much everywhere, at least in those 15 teamers. So check, on your 12 teamers in your shallower leagues, double check that situation. Anybody else you might be eyeballing, Kevin, as far as potential saves go?
Yeah, I think the big one with the Yates injury and Stevenson down for the season is most people are thinking Jordan Romano, and I think that's probably the best bet. I am pretty sure it was Bubba in the Bloom, but it could have been someone else. Are expecting triple-digit bids on Romano right out the gate this weekend, which that is what we've seen in the past. If we think a guy can grab this job and hold it, and the thing is, Yates could be back in a couple of weeks, But also, if Romano is performing well, Yates isn't the kind of guy that's going to come in and steal the job, I don't think. But that's too much for me with that possibility of Yates coming back. So I'd rather take a shot on someone like Drew Pomeranz for the Angels that has some closing experience as well for much less money. Of course, I'll put a bid in on Romano, but I don't think it's going to be enough. There are a couple of others I like as well, but I think you have something here on Romano.
I mean, we just saw Romano do this last year. It's like he had his moment. He ran with
Didn't he get the $300 bids a couple years ago?
Yeah, in Toronto. Yep. But he did it last year with the Phillies, and he ran with it for about 3 weeks, and then fell off a table or a cliff, whatever metaphor you want to use. And so I'm not saying I trust him enough, regardless of Yates is going to come back and hunt down that job. I don't expect him to keep it himself. And they've got, not that they have like some obvious answers in that bullpen. You named all of them and they're all hurt. I mean, Pomeranz could definitely do it. But the rest of that bullpen, I mean, he's the obvious pick and he's the obvious bid, but it's far from a triple digit slam dunk, if you will. I'm still holding out hope. I drafted in my home league, I played the team I played last year in the championship, ended up not keeping Reed Detmers. And so I drafted him right before his pick, and of course he texted me and he's like, God dang it. He's like, it's probably going to be good now. And he went for, and I'm like, I told him flat out, I'm like, I hope he sucks as a starter and they make him the closer. Because that's what I'm drafting him for in this particular style of league. He went 4 2/3, let up a bunch of runs, but struck out 9. This is exactly what the Angels need at the back end of their bullpen, right? And he was so good as a reliever last year. I'm still holding out hope that Detmers is the one that, ends up at the end of the season with more saves in an Angels uniform, or the most saves in an Angels uniform. It's tough right now. I mean, that was the only obvious one. Who knows what's happening with the Athletics between Harris and Leiter and Barlow and Sterner, and just keep naming names. The problem with the Athletics is that
I don't want them in my lineup for half of their games anyway.
Yes, but they're an actually good team, or at least appear to be a good team. It used to be a joke. It's like, oh, you don't mind having the closer on a bad team if they're the closer, but you don't want a committee member on a bad team. But now the Athletics seem like they're a committee member on a decent team. And so it's like, now do we start thinking about chasing that? But to your point, I don't want them in half the games anyway. And we have all gray area, all clouds. We have no idea what could happen on any given day so far, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon.
It was a lot of talk in Las Vegas that Phil Dussault was drafting Chris Martin everywhere as the Texas closer, and he's the one that was on the Texas closer last season. If you remember, it didn't last very long, but he was the one guy that drafted him in a main event last year. Now Chris Martin, we had a FAAB period since then, 65% rostered now in main events. Oh, actually, I think it was higher than that. But he's available in 12s. But here's the kicker. On Saturday, they both pitched in the 9th and both gave it up. Both being Robert Garcia, who I have several shares of. I really thought it was going to be him, but Robert Garcia did start the 9th. He was given the first opportunity. Didn't pitch well. they brought in Chris Martin, and he gave up the tying runs. So it's tough. It's kind of like with the Carlos Estevez. If it's not a health thing, and they were going to give Robert Garcia the opportunity first in the ninth inning on Saturday, I would tend to think he's the favorite. However, at the same time, it was Alexander that ended up getting the save for Texas on Saturday. Came and bailed them both out. Then this one, I have a couple of shares of Taylor Rogers in Minnesota. Cole Sands got that save today. And I heard DVR talking earlier this week on Rates and Barrels that was kind of the guy he was leaning towards. We've seen him get a couple of save opportunities in the past. Jason has this a committee with 3 guys in that closer role, but you never know if the guy that gets that first one and looks good just continues getting the opportunities. I would probably grab Cole Sands tomorrow night, taking that shot.
Well, I mean, wasn't Cole Sands the one everybody thought was going to take over after Jax left and Duran left, and it obviously nothing worked out for the Twins in the second half last season. But that wouldn't be terribly surprising. I mean, the fact that he already got the save is not terribly surprising. He does seem to have some of the better stuff in that bullpen. That's not saying a whole lot based on their roster construction at the moment. Back to Texas, it's just Chris Martin just doesn't seem like I don't know if it's he doesn't want the job, he doesn't need the job, or the Rangers never really wanted to ever put him in the job, because they had a lot of opportunities last year to put him in that job.
They wanted him to take that job and he never did.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, nothing ever lined up.
I'm not dropping Robert Garcia yet.
Yeah, I think that's really what I'm getting to. I will be very surprised at this point if Chris Martin runs with that job for more than a spot, start spot appearance in the ninth here or there. All right, Kevin, we'll move into my favorite category. I always love to see who you're going to put in here, especially now that we're in the official period where you can't draft guys unless you can't pick up guys unless they've made their debut. Wild card section, unless somebody drafted them and then dropped them. So always take a look. You never know, or keep your notebook, as Kevin will always say. Who you got here in the wild card section?
This is based on something we talked about earlier about a player I like for the opportunity they have right now in Casey Schmidt. But I think Bryce Eldridge will hit the ground running back at AAA, and we will see him pretty quickly in San Francisco. So I would try to grab him in leagues where he is available and you are able to pick him up. The other one, if people in your league last weekend or this weekend drop Dylan Cruz, I think he's worth a stash here. I think we see him pretty quickly.
Let me ask you about. I want to make sure I'm looking.
I knew you were going to have one for me.
I got one for you. I got you one for you. He's 2% rostered in the main event. I'm looking at Alex Freeland for the Dodgers. He's third base eligible right now, playing second base for the Dodgers most of the time, I guess. It's hard to say most or least of the time when there's only 2 games of record to look at. But overall, can Alex Freeland, who is a decent prospect in their system, carve out enough playing time and or production to be relevant long term, or are we just trying to take advantage, possibly take advantage of with the opportunity they're giving him right now, at least until maybe they call Kim back up, or something else Tommy Edman comes off the IL. Obviously there are things that are going to happen in LA. But if I'm putting any kind of little bit of bid on Alex Freeland this week, should I be hoping that I'm striking it rich for the long term, or let's just plan for the next 2 or 3 weeks at most?
I think that's all you plan for, but I also think this is a situation where his performance will have a lot to do with what happens. You know, it was only 97 plate appearances, but his strikeout rate went up a lot more than we would hope, even making that jump from the minors to, only 97 plate appearances, but his strikeout rate jumped 15 percentage points over what it had been. He had over 600 plate appearances last season, counting AAA, over 500 plate appearances, and then those 97 at the MLB level. Now he's projected for a mid to upper 20s strikeout rate because, this is a guy that had mid-teens home runs. Last season didn't steal as often as he did in 2024, but he had over 30 in 24, still approached 20 last season. This is a guy that could play himself into more playing time. And if you're just want a piece of that Dodgers lineup for the next couple of weeks, like you were saying, you could strike gold. I think this is a guy you could strike gold with. It's not what I'd plan on. I'd plan on that 2 to 3 weeks. But this is the type of guy that would really tempt me. Like if I'm looking at him or a boring veteran that I'm just getting my plate appearances from, which is the guys I like to play it safe with some of those guys very often. But I think there's enough potential in this profile that he might be worth getting the nod over someone like that for the next couple of weeks. Absolutely.
Between my aforementioned TJ Rumfield and Alex Freeland, who, position eligibility definitely plays a role here. Team context obviously plays a role here as well. That would be my other kind of wild card situation because we just haven't seen enough of him in Colorado. What opportunity, which one would you tend to lean, especially if position's not a concern? Obviously if you need a first baseman or if you need a corner, you go to Rumfield, but that's not true because Freeland is available at third base currently. So they both be corner eligible.
I don't know if you'd get away with this. Probably not, with Rumfield already being 58% rostered in main events. But what I'd like to say is Freeland for the next couple of weeks. If it works out, you're holding on to him. If it doesn't, you drop him and give Rumfield a run. However, that might be too late on Rumfield. In 12s, you might be able to try that. But I think this time of year, I'd take the shot with Freeland. I think there's enough potential there that there's it's not a great chance, but I think there's a chance that he could hit the ground running here. And even if and when Edman comes back, somebody's going to be gone for the Dodgers. Right? They have so many guys that can be injured.
Sure.
And I don't trust Colorado. The power's not really that extra great at Coors Field until it gets hot in the middle of the summer. And that plays a part. If it was July, I'd probably say Rumfield, no doubt, for that reason. So, yeah, I think it's close, but I would lean Freeland, I think.
Yeah, I think there's obviously more outs for Freeland to lose the job in shorter order than Rumfield.
Oh, absolutely.
There's only, looking at the Dodgers roster, there's only 4 guys that have options. Everybody else is stuck. So you're either cutting them or you're not. Miguel Rojas, Santiago Espinal being the 2 on the bench that do not have options either. So between rushing, you're not gonna send down your backup catcher, and then Andy Pages and Alex Call being the other ones that have options available.
You're
they're
not
still
sending down your World Series hero either.
yeah. And they're both outfielders. So it's like,
Yeah.
some guys can play multiple positions. They could force Mookie's hand and have him play second base or go back at the outfield in a pinch. But I think Freeland's the obvious odd man out. Even if he is starting more regularly than any other guys, the other guys just fit in those roles a little bit better off the bench. All right, but that's still some fun names to consider as you are filling out what should be very long waterfall bids, especially at this point in the season. There are still lots of names and options. I know my waterfall bids were pretty good last week in all my leagues, and I expect them to be just as long this week. But Kevin, anything else that you can leave us with as we set our bids for just the second time?
Yes. I'm not going to say it's early, even though I kind of just did. But what I am going to say is kind of try to, I hate this phrase, but try to stay calm, right? And because what I'm getting at is we talked about a whole lot of different scenarios throughout this episode that at this point in the season, I'm probably not entertaining, right? We talked about some pitcher streaming, and I am all about streaming pitching versus matchups. Some of those I'm probably staying away from. Even I am staying away from them at this point. I do like a couple of the two steps, and like I said, even that Taiwan Walker, including an at Colorado, I kind of like that one. I would love it later in the season, and Verlander, I really like that we talked about. He's only available in 12s, but for the most part, I'm only making these moves if I've had injuries or guys get sent down. I'm not making any drops due to performance yet. Absolutely not. I don't think anybody is, but just a reminder, just I'm going to take it kind of slow in FAAB this week. You did bring up the great point that kind of swayed me a little bit on a couple of these pitchers. I might pick a couple of them up if I have the room and not put them in my lineup, because like I said, streaming pitching is how we find the breakout pitchers. But hopefully you don't have to do too much yet, I guess is what, and don't force anything. You'll be way more upset if you drop somebody this early and they go off than you will if you wait just a couple of more weeks and maybe miss a guy. Because I don't think many of the Alex Freeland is very appealing to me, because I think maybe not immediately. It may be only for a couple of weeks now, but we don't know what's going to happen with the rest of that Dodgers lineup over the next 2 weeks. They have some fairly old players out there in positions. So someone like that, where I think it may turn into more, I might make that move. But for the most part, I'm going to stand pat unless I have injuries or guys got sent down.
Stay calm and FAAB on, right? That's going to be the t-shirt.
But in those spots, to your point, yes, you need really, really long waterfalls. That was another big topic in Las Vegas. Guys that already typically have much longer waterfalls than us are saying their waterfalls aren't long enough, so everybody else's are getting longer. Ours have to.
It's one of those things where it's like when you think you're like, oh, this is fine. I don't actually want any of these players. But you need something. You want something, and if everybody else's waterfalls are long, yours better be longer, just so you can make sure that you're getting something. You're not taking that 0, and you're not just having a bench full of IL spots or whatever the case may be. Because you're gonna, things happen throughout the course of the week, and especially in your lineup when you have an opportunity to make that switch on Friday, you want to be able to have it. All right, well, that is going to do it for the first full true FAAB of the season, second overall though, and that's going to do it for us at episode 248 of On the Wire. After all that, I am Adam Howe, and on behalf of Kevin Hastings, thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.